we found keys to a Honda Civic, and we had planned on stealing it. But I was
Yeah.
like the one friend he wouldn't let get into trouble, and he's like, "You're not coming
Yeah.
with us." And they ended up getting a high-speed chase, and all three of them almost died 90 mile per hour into an oak tree. And I was at the hospital while they were doing brain surgery, just holding his hand because he saved my life.
Leadership isn't failing because people don't care. It feels harder than it should because too many leaders were never shown how to carry it. This is the Leadership Lunch Hour. I'm Don Healy, joined by my good friend Adam Cumpiano. We've led teams in environments where the pressure is real, mistakes are costly, and decisions have consequences. These are unscripted conversations about what leadership actually looks like when you're responsible for people, outcomes, and hard decisions. Welcome back. Here is episode 7 of the Leadership Lunch Hour. Can't believe that we are 6 or 7 episodes in on this, and sticking to our commitment. We're doing this every week. We're gonna do this for at least a year. And following the last show, Adam and I were talking about what we were going to do for this next episode, and we both believe in the power of knowing somebody's story. You know, a lot of leaders don't think about it, but you know, you really need to know the backstory of your team in a real, like, genuine, candid way to really understand how to lead the people on your team. And you know, it's interesting if you stop and think about people that are close to you, that you work with, that you lead. If you really start thinking, like, you know, how did they grow up? What was their home life like? What, you know, what's their family like? What's their morals? What's their belief? And you know, I think Adam can agree that if you don't understand those things, you're missing a huge piece of what it takes to connect emotionally and to be able to lead somebody. You know, Adam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think people's stories are very important. It shapes them who they are and who they want to be. And I think if you don't understand where they're coming from, how they were raised, or the environment they grew up in, and then you don't understand them. And it's
Yeah.
very important to understand their why, right? They do things and how they communicate,
Mhm.
what their trigger points are,
Yeah.
and what's their motivational points. It all entwines to their story. The story is so important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Adam and I both have participated in a program called Wild Spark, and if you haven't looked into them, I highly would recommend them. Their programs are great. It's just enough information. I would say that many of the people that I've done Wild Spark with would agree that the module about story and the importance of story is the power of story is what they call it, is one of the most impactful ones, because it really opens your eyes to how much somebody's backstory influences their behaviors, their decisions, the way they communicate, the way they are led. But you know, the other important thing too is, you know, explaining that story or having that story shared throughout the team, between the team members. This isn't just a leader to team member idea. It's, you know, members on the team knowing what each other's backstory is. And in some of the workshops and things that I've been through with this, when you start talking about people's story, there's always threads. There's always things that we didn't know about somebody. That's like, oh, well, I did that too, or I grew up there, or I knew that person, or I thought that way, or I experienced this at home. And it's very, very powerful for leading a team. And so with all that said, that kind of sets the stage for what we're talking about today. And that's, you know, Adam and I talking about our stories. We've got very different stories, different lives that led us to leadership. And so we thought, you know, it might be interesting to you all to hear some of our story. And honestly, you know, there's some of Adam's story that I haven't heard. There's probably some of my story
Mhm.
that Adam doesn't know. And so we wanted to talk through this and spend this session just laying that groundwork of who we are, where we come from, what our backgrounds are, and maybe find some nuggets that we didn't know about each other on what
Mhm.
makes up our leadership styles. So
Yeah.
with that, I'm gonna kick it over to Adam and let you just, you know, start talking through, like, the beginning. You know, kind of
Yeah.
what formed who you are and how you lead.
Yeah. Thank you, Don. I gonna get vulnerable here, um, and put it out there. Not everything, but the big nuggets, and yeah, piggyback real quick. Wild Spark. When I started forming my leadership and pulling all from different places. And then WildSpark came along and it's like, wow, this
Mhm.
is exactly what I am and who I am and how I want to lead. And then it times it by 10. So yes, I highly
Right.
recommend WildSpark. Like every single module is like, yes, that's
Yeah.
it.
That
That's
makes
what I
sense.
am. That makes sense. And
Mm.
so yeah, WildSpark is huge. Definitely recommend it for sure. All right, the beginning. Well, my mom was really young when she had me, 21. And my father, they were married, but the marriage didn't last very long. They were really young. He was in the Air Force and he left and went to Germany. I was born in South Carolina and in the South, and my mom and I moved around so much in the first 10 years of life. Like,
Mhm.
we went from the South to Montana to LA, back to Florida, back to Montana, back to LA. And it's like the culture differences were in those first 10 years, learning totally different cultures. And we had it rough, for the
Yeah.
first 10 years. My mom did everything she could to provide for us. But like many times, I was her safety net, like, the hugs at night crying, like, those
Yeah.
times that we slept in cars and,
Yeah.
battered women's shelters and, boyfriend after boyfriend. My mom was a bit of a hustler and life of the party. She looked like Goldie Hawn, could get along with anybody, had huge empathy, but she also grew up really rough. So she could manipulate things really
Hmm.
quick. And yeah, we were in tough neighborhoods, really bad apartment complexes. I just remember just being like constantly like uneasy, not stable ever. And
Yeah.
then, there's two other gentlemen in my life that I call dad. Those two men saved my life.
Mhm.
Very angry as a child. I was very confused. We moved around so much. I had an anger problem. Uh, you know, about 10 years old, we moved to a neighborhood. My second stepdad, who my mom stayed married with after that for 35 years, still my dad to this day, now that she's passed. But, they were good men. Like my first stepdad, Ron, he still alive. He's 80. He's turning 87 tomorrow. Happy birthday, Dad. He taught me about hey, don't hurt the plant. It's
Mhm.
living. Don't pull the leaf off. Or, a lot of nature, a lot of like empathy for people. Like, hey, don't just walk past, the homeless guy. Let's see if we can help him. Like, he was really good about that.
Yeah.
And then very strict, old school from the
Yeah.
30s and 40s. And him and my mom were on and off all the time, but he was always around. Like if something bad was happening, I would go to my dad Ron's house. Like,
Yeah.
and even when they divorced, it was like we were there on the weekends. I was his son, no matter what.
Yeah.
And then my second stepdad, like the logical, mechanical, always welding in the garage, always in the garage, always drawing
Mhm.
up something, not much emotional there, but
Mhm.
always there. We went
Yeah.
to every game, whatever. And he pulled us out of the bad stuff for the most part. And, we kind of moved to a cool neighborhood. But kids in the
Yeah.
90s were feral. We were unhinged. And
Yeah.
if you were a teenager in the mid to late 90s, you cheated death more than you could count. And mom, I know you probably know all the stories now, but yeah. And so during that time, a lot of uneasiness, a lot of like moving around, a lot of hard situations. And I said it in the
Yeah.
first podcast. I think the product of your environment is what your DNA for one, and
Yeah.
the significant people around you teach you. So I
Yeah.
had, a couple really good guys that said, "Hey, don't do that. Hey, why are you so angry?
Yeah.
You're going to end up in jail or hurting somebody really bad," and
Yeah.
just constantly working on me. And, instead of becoming like calloused predator, like most people, well, not most people, a lot of people have to be, because that's,
Mhm.
that's who's around them, or
Yeah.
maybe
Survival.
victim. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're always a victim. Always, your whole life, you're going to be a victim. Everybody's out to get you. Or there's people like me that, have a lot of empathy and passion and drive to prove everybody wrong. I was told
Hmm.
my whole young adult, my young life, you're not going to make it. You got anger
Yeah.
problems, you're stubborn, whatever, you're not gonna graduate high school. Well, I proved them wrong. Like, you're not gonna do this right. Well,
Yeah.
I set out to prove them wrong. And so that really shaped me, like, to prove everybody wrong, to be inspirational, to inspire myself, to self-reflect. I really learned the skill of self-reflection as a kid. I would lay up in bed
Yeah.
with earphones on and just be like, "Hey, I gotta stop being so angry. I gotta stop hanging out with
Right.
this crowd," and
Where do
I
you
think
think
that
you learned
early
that?
on.
Where do you think you learned that? Where do you think you learned that self-reflection? Was that somebody told that to you, or is that something that just occurred to you? Because I mean, that's a really powerful point. There's a lot of people that don't figure that out. Where did you pick that up?
Well, part of it I think is God given.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's given strengths, right?
Yeah.
And some people can pick up a violin or a piano and make beautiful music. Some people can
Yeah.
sing like the birds, right? For me, it was empathy, self-reflection, and drive to prove everybody wrong. Like, I
Yeah.
have a high unique drive to be the best I could be. And then
Yeah.
what complements that is I have a high drive to make others around me be the best they could be.
Yeah.
And that, I think a lot of it's God given, and I think a lot of it is the two dads in my life that are still in my life. They were stepdads, and they could have bounced a long time ago.
Yeah.
But they, to this day, even my 87-year-old dad, he, you know, "Hey, I'm proud of you. Like,
Yeah.
you proved everybody wrong," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for me, there was a period of time in my teenage years, you know, I was headed down the wrong path. But I had a lot of
Uh-huh.
friends. Well, I would say friends. Like, our neighborhood was so mixed, and there was a lot of gang violence back then, and a
Uh-huh.
lot of pressure. And my friends and I, we just banded together, and a lot of my really close ones to this day, like, kept me out of trouble. Like, they're like,
Yeah.
"No, I promise, mom." Like, one story, we found keys to a Honda Civic, and we had planned on stealing it. They left them in the trunk of the car, and we grabbed them, and then that night we went to go steal it. And a really good friend of mine I grew up with, always in trouble, but I was
Yeah.
like the one friend he wouldn't let get into trouble, and he was like, "You're not coming
Yeah.
with us. You're not going." And I was
Yeah.
mad. I was like, "Yeah, let's go. This is fun." And he's like, "No." And they ended up getting a high-speed chase, and all three of them almost died very
Jeez.
violently, death in
Yeah.
90 mile per hour into an oak tree.
Right.
And I was at the hospital while they were doing brain surgery to relieve brain pressure, and just holding his hand because he saved my life. Like,
Right.
I've just been blessed. I think God, all glory to God, and he has
Yeah.
opened the right door for me, closed the wrong doors, and gave me a good sense of discernment and intuition. I could always
Yeah.
feel when things aren't right, and I better
Mhm.
switch gears and leave, and
Trust in your gut. Yeah.
trust in your gut, and discernment of people. Growing up, like I could read people like a book now. I could
Yeah.
see their intentions right away. I can hear it in their
Yeah.
voice. I can see it in their face. I can feel the vibe. And if it's wrong, if it's off, I have nothing to do with you. You can tell right away.
Yeah.
And God given. I mean, well, in product in the environment, I had to just survive, to read situations, trust my gut feeling, my intuition, comes from the caveman
Yeah.
days, right? Keeping you alive, being able to pick out shadows in the dark, right? Knowing that they're predator, not friendly. I really learned, I mean, deep down in our human DNA, honing in on your intuition and your sixth sense, and knowing
Yeah.
your environment, and how to get
Yeah.
out of it if it's bad. And then, teenagers years, I had a couple of really awesome coaches too that, like, took me under their
Huh.
wing. I went
Mhm.
to 3 different high schools. I went to 3 different junior highs. I went to 8 different elementary schools. So it's
Yeah.
really hard to, like, you know, like, really make close, deep friends or connections, but there was a few people
Yeah.
along the way that really just you latch on to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
Well, and I'd
Yeah.
imagine for survival too, when you have that much change, you get really good at reading the room of a new crowd and
Yeah.
figuring out who resonates with you and your style and who you can connect with. Like, And, part of what I'm reading between the lines is, you learn that at a really, really young age, right?
Mhm.
It sounds like you'd roll into a new school, you're the new kid. You think back to those years. There's not much harder than being a brand new kid in a brand new school, and you learn those survival skills of reading the room, figuring out how people were, figuring out who was safe, who wasn't safe. Those are all important skills that have gone into your tool bag to make up who you are now.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit it right on the head. I think, even now I could go anywhere. I could fly to Chicago like I did a couple years ago, never been there, and navigated my way through the city of Chicago to Wisconsin in a car. Like,
Right.
and I always get this urge. Jackie, my wife, hates it, but like every couple years, I'm like, let's move. I want to go somewhere else.
Let's
And
change this up.
yeah, and she's like, "No," because she stayed in one place her whole life. She goes, "No, I want
Yeah.
stability," and over the years, it's calmed that urge in me, like, "All right, it's time to roll up. Let's go. We're going somewhere else." But I think it's really helped me, my adult life go from career to career. I was really
Yeah.
lost. Construction was always easy money, and then retail. I had a lot of fun in the retail end, trying to grow the people, the morale, because retail is really dependent on the leader and
Yeah.
and the morale of the leader. And then, so even owning my own business at one point, the barbecue business for a short stint, like having to come up with processes and then
Hmm.
helping the people that were invested with no paycheck to be invested. And what amazing people. And it was a lot of fun. And so, yeah, like to this day, I look back at my childhood and I wouldn't change it for the world. It was very
Yeah.
scary at times, very difficult. I won't go too deep into it, but at the end of the day, it made me who I was and who I am. And there was a time, even in my 20s, I was angry at the world. Like I kept
Yeah.
falling on my face, career after career, and I had kids, and I couldn't figure it out, and I kept wondering why. And then one
Yeah.
day I looked in the mirror, and there's two parts to this. One day I looked in the mirror, and I was like, "It's me.
Mm.
I'm angry. I feel like I deserve more when I didn't earn it."
Mhm.
And the second thing is my wife and I told the story a while back, like pregnant with the fifth child, we had lost everything again, watching our car get repoed at 3 a.m, looking out the window of an apartment, kind of the bad neighborhood, really bad
Mhm.
neighborhood, which we loved. We
Yeah.
we thrived in that. But crying, like, why? Like, we work hard, we're good people, we don't hurt
Yeah.
people, we don't do anything bad. And the one thing that came to us is that we're always negative. When negative
Yeah.
things happen to you all
Yeah.
the time, we realize when one good thing happens, you subconsciously wait for the three bad things to happen right after. And they always did.
Right. Yeah, everything
Always
happens
did.
in
Whatever it
threes,
may be.
right?
Lost your
Yeah.
job. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that
Self-fulfilling
night or that
prophecies, right?
morning, yeah. And that morning we decided to say everything's positive. And, that was 16
Yeah.
years ago. And to this day, we check and balance each other. I mean, the
Yeah.
car could break down and we're going to find a positive in it, or whatever happens, we're going to find a
Okay.
positive.
Yeah.
And
So, Adam, I've got a question. Thinking back to when you were a kid growing up, when did you first notice people following you? That people, aligned with you and were following you and listening to you. Was there a time when you like first noticed, or when you think back to when people started following you?
when I stopped being like on the defense, every new place I went to, every new school, I was always on the defense. I was always that kid that was like looking for it, like, set the tone. And the minute that I started just really, really, what really started was like just making fun of myself right away to take their ammo away.
Mhm.
We all get kind
Right.
of bullied. Like junior high is rough, right? Especially in the '90s.
Yeah.
And I would just make fun of myself first and break that ice and
Yeah.
break down and take their ammo away, and then just started noticing I made friends a whole lot easier. And
Yeah.
there'd be times that I would say, "Hey, this is probably not right." And I think one time we were in high school party and things got out of hand, and I said, "Hey guys, let's go." And everybody left the house immediately with me. I knew then that I
Yeah.
had a voice and
Right.
people listened. And when they all followed me out of the house, we got out of there. That's when I kind of really realized that, hey, if I do the right things, say the right things, and I'm genuine, a genuine friend, and I genuinely care, and I
Yeah.
put down this wall that I have up, this defensive wall, and be vulnerable,
Yeah.
then more people than not will follow you.
Yeah. What do you think, I mean, you talked about your mom, in a framework of a little bit to where, I mean, she used, some manipulation, right, to be able to get where she needed to go and be able to survive. And, there's and I mean, if we're honest, like, there's a lot of parallels between manipulation and leadership. And you can
Yeah,
take those
yeah.
those paths either direction, right? And I mean, considering the what you were brought up in and the world that you were in, you very easily could have taken leadership and manipulation down the wrong Y in the road, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you could have been the most influential gang leader or drug leader or whatever that you wanted to be. And so what sets you on that path to go the good direction, to be able to influence people positively using
I really, my mom, her childhood was a nightmare,
Mhm.
and she had to learn manipulation to survive.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
she could get on the game show Survivor, she would have done really well.
She would have
She
figured it out.
she clicked people up, man. Oh man, she'd go into church and click it up and make clicks. Like
Yeah.
I don't she would pit my brothers and I against each other. And it was so subconscious for her. It was a survival thing for her. She
Yeah.
could go into any ethnic group that we lived in or whatever and survive and be just fine. She was kind of like, I forget her name on the movie Casino, Ross' wife, where she was the life of the party, walked in the room, lit it up, but it was survival. And for me, I think it was the same thing. I think it was like, manipulating to inspire to be good instead of, I just hated negativity even as a kid. Like, even when I was negative and I was angry and mad at the world and trying to fist fight everybody, even in my late teens and 20s, I hated it. I went home just like, this is not me. This is not who I am. So definitely God given for my empathy and my
Yeah.
drive to be a different person, set a different
Yeah.
example for the people around me and for my children. And yeah, yeah.
What what do you think your leadership superpower is?
Good question. I give a damn.
Yeah.
I truly give
Yeah.
a damn about my people. I
Care about
truly
people.
care about their dreams and their goals,
Yeah.
and I put mine last. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was labeled in one company a highlighter, a human highlighter.
Yeah.
That's I was embarrassed by that title at first, but I embrace it now. I love shouting people
Yeah.
out. I love highlighting the great things that they are and do. That gives me
Yeah.
my energy. That gives me my award. I've said it before. My trophy is watching the eyes light up. And my mom was the same way. Christmas, I must get it from my mom because Christmas, like, or birthdays, she'd be waiting for that big wide-eyed surprise and tear,
Right.
and she'd
Yeah.
watch, and if you didn't have it all day long, I did wrong.
Yeah.
Huh, I'm sorry about your present. No, no, no. And you're like, no, no, it was great. But she thrived on other people's happiness and
Yeah.
joy and like gave her energy. And I'm the same way.
Yeah. 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 I could see that. I could see that. Well, and I mean, there's something in your childhood that has inspired that caring for others, right? That being able to put your ego aside and put, yourself before others. And I mean, were you always like that? I mean, even in the tough times, like, was
I
there a
seeked
point
attention as a
where
kid. There's probably video of me out there as a kid, like, look at me jumping off a cliff or surfing or skateboarding, like always seeked affirmation as a kid, especially from the
Mhm.
male role models in my life. And, I wanted to prove that I was great and I could be great. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no. And then that shifted, really when Jackie and I, had that positive change. And then I went through the Home Depot thing
Yeah.
that flipped
Yeah.
that totally. In my brain, I just
Yeah.
totally flipped wanting to be the best and prove that I was the best to wanting the others to be their best.
Right. Right. That's amazing. And we talk a lot about the tools that we pick up along the way, and being cognizant of those lessons and those people and those influences. And I see people that have to know why, what's happening to them every moment. Like, well, why is this happening to me? Why is this? And sometimes you just have to embrace that those things are happening to you for a reason, and you take those tools with you, and
Mhm.
you pack them into your tool bag as you move through your life and your career, because they don't all make sense at the time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think, as a young kid, I was a lot of, bullying and fighting, and I didn't want to hurt people, and I hated it. And then in my teenage years, I like switched that flip in my head and started just, if I
Yeah.
was going to get respect, I'm going to take it. And that was the wrong way to be. So in my young kid
Yeah.
years, I was very empathetic then. That kind of went away a little bit in my teenage years and probably into my 20s where I didn't care. I'm taking my respect. Wrap it up. I think, a lot of empathy as a kid, especially because of my mom. She
Yeah.
was always taken advantage of in certain ways because she always loved people. And in my teens and early 20s, being angry at the world because I kept failing, I started demanding respect and taking it. And that was not right. That didn't set right with me. That tore me
Hmm.
up inside. It ruined relationships with my brothers and my mom for many years. Um, and then, yeah, when Jackie and I made that conscious decision, really, that's when it changed for me, and I'm a
Yeah.
completely different human than when I was, 21 through, 25, 30 maybe. And,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's
um,
cool. That's cool.
because of the people
Is it-
around me. Yeah.
yeah. Well, and you continue that on now. I mean, every day,
Yeah.
learning from the people around you, continue to grab tools and hone who you are, and no, it's incredible. I really enjoy hearing your story because it's really interesting because our styles have a lot of parallels. I mean, the caring for people, right? Like you and I both have that through and through. Completely divergent backgrounds, and still, come to the same threads of, caring about people, reading people, leading with empathy, those things, which is pretty incredible. So it doesn't, the grand scheme of things, your background, your story makes up who you are, but it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily define your endpoint.
No, no. And what's that? What's that saying I said before? Maybe on the podcast. It's the dash in between the dates,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
and that resonated with me so much. Like that every day, I think about that. What am I going to do
Yeah.
today to fill up
Yeah.
part of that dash in a
Right.
good way? In a good way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's very similar, and there's a John Lennon quote, or at least it was attributed to Lennon. That, I mean, I remember it was probably elementary school that I heard it, and I mean, it's to the effect of life is what happens to you while you're planning for the future, and while you're
Mm.
thinking about all of those things, what life is really what's happening to you in that moment. So, taking advantage of those moments and learning and growing from those moments, you don't necessarily know what that next dot is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And stay positive.
Right.
Whatever that dot is, find the positive, is find that person that makes you think in a positive way. Because the negative, I mean, how many studies have been done on plants and everything? You feed it negative, it dies quickly.
Yeah.
You feed it positivity, it thrives. And what's your story, Don?
Yeah.
Where do you come from? Where does the story begin? How did you
You
get
know,
here?
honestly, in thinking through this, I'm gonna go way, way back. And I have to give my folks a ton of credit because they had me late. They were in their late 20s when they had me. But I remember my dad telling me that they intentionally waited because they wanted steady jobs, they wanted a house, they wanted stable lives. They wanted those things before they brought me into the world. And I give them a massive amount of credit because, I mean, that really helped set the stage for me. And and it plays a lot into who I am right now. But then the other major factor actually happened on the night I was born. and I was born with a very rare disease, birth defect.
Mm.
One of the first kids to survive with it. They baptized me when I was born because I wasn't going to make it, and
Wow.
rushed me to Children's Hospital. It was just through a weird series of events. Like, my mom ended up had a C-section, and had I been birthed naturally, I wouldn't have made it. Like, there were so many things that stacked up that it was really just a very small chance that I ended up making it. So I believe that has shifted my view on things through my entire life. Like, because every day is a gift to me. Because I wasn't supposed to be here on day one.
Hmm.
And, you know, I through my life, there's been periods where I have to check up on that of like, every day is a gift. Every day I get here, I've got to treat it as it's a gift. Because I wasn't supposed to be here. But I grew up in a awesome family. My parents have been married 55, I don't know, they've been married for a long, long time.
That's
Long
awesome.
time. I'm a bad kid for not knowing exactly how long, but they've been married forever. And they worked very hard to create a very stable life for me
Hmm.
as a kid. And I was only child. After the whole incident with me being born, my folks were like, "Nope, we're one and done." Um, Grew up close to my folks, and doing things with them on the weekends, and spending time at home with them, and working on boats and cars and working in the garage, using my hands, doing all those things. Was a lot of my childhood's problem solving, figuring things out, building things. uh, Grew up around adults. My parents always said that they wanted me to be a kid that was good around adults. And you think about boats and classic cars and that sort of stuff, there's not a lot of kids running around in that. So I had to be able to communicate well. I had to be able to communicate above my age, because I was hanging out with adults a lot. But thinking about the dichotomy of my parents, my mom, she's super neat. She breaks stereotypes. If I had to say that about my mom, because she's the nicest, sweetest lady you've ever met. And then she went out and sold cars in the early 90s in
Mm.
pits of everything that you hate about car salesmen. And the thing is she went into car sales, and well, she was in insurance sales. She went and did insurance sales. And then she went into F&I, where, like, I mean, everybody struggles with the F&I guy, right?
Yeah.
But mom went into all of these things, breaking stereotypes, because she went in being her genuine, sweet, pleasant, highly educated, highly precise self, and she made herself successful. I mean, here's my mom, 5'2",
Mm.
again, like the nicest, sweetest, meekest, mild lady that you ever met.
She
And
is.
she
Yeah.
she went to this high performance Bob Bondurant high performance school of racing, right? Came out with her race driver's license, and I think about that. I mean, there's pieces of that in me, that breaking stereotypes. I don't necessarily fit who people think I am, on the surface all the time. And there's definitely been side roads of my life where I've gone and done something that people don't expect. They're like, "What are you doing, Don?" Right? And I, pieces of that's my mom. And then my dad,
Mm.
he's very precise. And he's got there was a lot of stuff in his background, and I absolutely commend him for everything that he overcame through his childhood, losing his folks early. But both my parents are very, very, like, steady, stay the course. But dad, I mean, he worked the same career for 45 or 50 years.
Mm.
Became highly, highly skilled at what he did. He's very precise. And he's got to do it right. It's got to be the right way. And there's no questions about that. And he also is one of those people that always he doesn't necessarily go hire other people to do things. He figures it out. He's
Right.
always done
Right.
that. I grew up in that environment, again, working on boats and cars and stuff, where dad just figured out how to do it. I mean, I remember dad watching VHS videos on learning how to use a wire feed welder that he had rented, so that we
Nice.
could weld in the shock towers on a car we were working on, right?
No
And that's
YouTube then. Yeah. Yeah.
no, but that's
Yeah.
like, I think about it,
Yeah.
my wife will very much say it. That's so me. Like,
Yeah.
there's something, there's things that that I'll take on that I shouldn't be doing, but I figure it out, and
Yeah.
that's been part of my MO my whole life.
So I think, if I can interject real quick, so
Yeah.
you're a lot like your mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
You always seek, to me, the Don I know for the last almost 10 years, almost decade, 9 years almost, you always seek the path untraveled.
Yeah.
Or making
Yeah.
your own path and
Or not
what you're
afraid
on
of the
now.
path untraveled.
Or not
Right.
afraid of it at all. You have
Yeah.
no fear. And so to hear your dad be the extreme one way, same job for 45 years,
Yeah.
and then your mom, like, no fear, just hopping and getting a race car license. So I see it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right on. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, and it's good because I mean those two things, I have defined myself previously as the perfectionist with ADD, right? And like but I'm constantly I constantly fight both sides of that, right? Like
Yeah.
like something in my soul has to do it absolutely right, but I know that my attention spans are going to run out. And that's kind of defined me, and it's made who I am, and that's part of the reason why I build processes and systems is because I know that I've got a limited attention span. And for it to be right and to stay the way that I think it should be, I've got to put something in place, and it's got to be written down to make that perpetual.
Well, yeah. And you got to, I'm going to expand on that, but you get an itch to not stay stable and stagnant.
Right.
You constantly want to grow in one way or the other. It doesn't matter. You're like, to me, kind of like water. Like, you want to find the path that is hard to get into and figure out a way subconsciously. And I'm looking for stability all the time. That's why
Yeah.
I love where I'm at now, and I'm subconsciously looking for stable. And here you are. I love it. You get these impulses, and you're like, I'm going. And
Right.
yeah, it is what it is. And yeah, go ahead.
And we're gonna figure it out, right? Like, how many times have I said, I don't know where we're going, but we're gonna figure it out.
We're gonna figure
right?
it out.
Because
Yeah,
seems like the right way to go.
just like your excursions out there in the no man's land with your crew. You don't know what's going to happen out in the desert, but you don't
figure
care.
it out.
Yeah.
Yep. So I mean, early on, I mean, elementary school, I got involved. I mean, playing t-ball and baseball, and then got into Cub Scout, Boy Scouts, and it's interesting. That path very much started growing up on boats as a kid. I always saw the Coast Guard guys on the Puget Sound, and I was like, I want to be a Coast Guard guy. And my dad, real young, was like, well, if you want to go to the Coast Guard, you should go to the Coast Guard Academy. And I was like, okay, well, what does it take to go to the Coast Guard Academy? And one of the things I remember this very, very clearly, and this, it had to be elementary school. My dad had said, you're never going to get into the Coast Guard Academy if you've got skeletons in your closet. So don't do things that put skeletons in your closet. Fair, right? And I mean, that's, sole reason why, I didn't do a lot of things. Never did drugs, never smoked, never whether or not, like, in my young mind, who knows what could have been the skeletons in the closet, but like that very much kept me on a path. But, part of that path was I knew that if you got your Eagle Scout award, it would help your odds in going to the Coast Guard Academy. So I was like, okay, well, let's do Cub Scouts. And, I still don't like think of myself as an influential leader. And I know, yes, that for whatever reason I am, but even in Cub Scouts, like and part of it was, probably that drive to just do things the right way. And if you work hard to do things the right way, people are going to follow you when they see a kid that's like working his butt off to learn how to tie the knots. They're going to come stand around the kid tying the knots to be like, hey, how do you tie the knots? Right. And fortunately, I had that skill to be able to explain why and how I was tying the knots. And then so kids followed me, and then I was the knot guy, and then I was the campfire guy. And then that's been, kind of my, honestly, like that's been kind of my leadership trajectory is do the things right. And then people follow along.
Yeah. And you're an innovator. You're an inventor. Yeah. I see it all day.
And people draw to it, and thinking, clear back, I was 12 years old leading a troop of Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, planning meetings, doing meal plannings, laying out when campouts were going to be, structuring, do all that sort of stuff from 12 years old. And, I have to think to, leading teams, I've got to be careful, especially things like running meetings and that sort of stuff. Like I've been running meetings with an agenda since I was 10 or 12 years old. And so it just comes so naturally to me, and I have to rethink of like, well, I mean, there's people that haven't been running meetings their whole life,
Right.
and take that into perspective.
Yeah.
So, some, military, like, Civil Patrol, learning those pieces of the puzzle, and then went into college. And, honestly, I went to college went after well, I didn't get into the Coast Guard Academy. If you didn't tell, I got accepted to West Point, Annapolis, Merchant Marine, like all the other academies except for the Coast Guard Academy, and had a choice of taking an ROTC scholarship. I think that was it, or going to one of the other academies. So I took ROTC scholarship, got into a program in electrical engineering. Figured out really quick electrical engineering wasn't for me. Went to mechanical engineering, and in my mind, with a mechanical engineering degree, I could go do my Air Force thing for however long that went, and then I could go build cool cars with a mechanical engineering degree. And pretty quickly learned that's not how it works with an engineering degree. And ended up getting into home building. But thinking back through, even in ROTC and Air Force ROTC, I was realizing that was not going to be the path for me in my career.
Yeah.
There was
too much
enough
structure.
Yeah, but it was a mess. Like there was structure, but it was a messy structure. Like they couldn't get anything right. Like pay was never right. Like scholarships were never paid on time. Like, and I was like, this isn't an organization I'm going to make my career in. But it was really, really interesting because I knew at that point that I could have been a very good military leader. And like I was rising through the ranks in ROTC, and like was going to be the squadron leader of the ROTC, whatever. And there was part of me in that moment of like, do leaders only excel in the military? And I know I'm good at leading people, but if I go into the real world, am I going to be able to hack it? And of course, I dove off and went my direction. And immediately, right before I graduated college, ended up going to a job fair where I was at the crossroads of life, the literal crossroads of life.
Right.
I could go to the left hallway and go to construction jobs. I could go to the right hallway and go to engineering jobs. And at that point, I didn't particularly like engineers. I didn't particularly like engineering. I knew I wasn't going to work on cars. I didn't want to sit at a desk. And so I went to the construction jobs. And it was 2 weeks after graduation where I landed right in the middle of a fast-paced home construction production job site, and with a leader who was I mean, kind of everything we talk about. He was busy, and he was like, "Hey, man, this is what we got. Do your best. I'm a phone call away. Let me know if I need you. If you need me. Otherwise, good luck. Have fun." And I kind of had to rally all of those skills that I had gathered through my whole life. And, in this, looking into these contractors that have been doing their jobs for 30 years and figure out how to really lead in the real world.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And, that was magical, right? Like that's when I was able to lean into my communication styles and the humbleness, and like that's really where I had that breakthrough where I learned that if I was humble and I listened, and then people would come towards me, and if I took to heart what they had to say and honestly really considered what they were giving me and learned from that, then they would lean into me, and that built trust and that built respect. And took those tools that I learned from that first week on the job and first year on the job, and have used those throughout my career. And then to go just up one higher level, work construction, took those same skills. When 2008 came around, construction wasn't such a great place to be, and took those skills back into the engineering world, government, the depths of government engineering world, and
red tape.
all of it, right? And it was interesting looking at my career, and like I remember being frustrated in these moments in my career where I would get ahead and then I would have to go back to the bottom. Because again, I was punching above my weight. Leading teams and doing the things that I was doing. I was 23, 24, whatever it was.
Yeah.
When I had to go back to engineering, and I started as an engineering tech, reviewing drawings on a desk for nuclear ventilation systems,
Yay.
and then quickly, if, for whatever reason, people started following me. People started listening, and I started helping people, started doing things right, and then next thing you know, I was leading a team, and then next thing you know, I was leading more teams. I did that cycle 4, 5 times of a government layoff would come up, and I would take another role, and I'd go back to an engineering tech, and I'd work my way up to engineering manager, project manager, left the government world, went into high hazard chemical. Did they hire me as a project engineer or a desk engineer or something like that? And went, engineering manager, ops manager, plant manager, like just kept doing those same cycles over and over and over again. And it's interesting, I talk a lot about, leading from my gut and not knowing where it comes from. And that's that, in those cycles of me moving from entry level to leader, aside from caring, doing the best job that I could, showing people what I was doing, like, I was never aspiring to be a leader, but whatever I was doing kept pushing me into those leadership roles, and that's,
Yeah.
that's been my whole career, right? Well, I was gonna wrap that up, and like thinking back through, in my career, in my time, Cub Scouts, military academies, college, engineering school, construction, engineering, chemical engineering, like all of those in those moments. And I remember in those moments being like, what am I doing? Am I just spinning my wheels in life? Like, what is this? And it really took until 5 years ago that I started really realizing that I had learned things. I had picked up tools from every single one of those
Right.
transitions that made up who I am, how I lead. It's never been more clear than now running my own business that those tools and those relationships and the people and all of those things have culminated into what I'm doing now.
Yeah. I think my question for you is it's a couple part question.
Yeah.
When did you learn empathy, or like know that you had empathy and you wanted people to be their best?
When I really thought about it was after you and I had that conversation as I was transitioning out of leading
Wow.
leading our old construction team,
Wow.
and you asked me what the secret sauce was. And I had
Yeah.
never really thought that deep about it. And it was following that conversation that it was caring for people and how I care for people, and
Yeah.
caring for my team, in a way that I would lay down my job for them. And I started leaning into that after that, because I'd never really thought about it. I never really knew what that piece of the puzzle was. But yeah, that right there was the moment where I really locked
Wow.
in on that being a piece of my leadership style.
That's that's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Would you say the way you were raised, maybe like an only child, and like you said, you had to like learn how to talk to adults at a really young age and stuff. When did you really hone in on your managerial courage to say no or disagree, especially with people way higher than you? I think one thing I always seen about you, you were good to say, no, I don't think that's correct. And I think, here's why. And, you always did it in a way that didn't really output anybody or make them
Yeah.
mad or disrespectful, but you've always had that way. You're like, no, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's the way to go. And I've seen you do it multiple times. And yeah, when did you hone in that skill? When did that come into play? Because you got a
You
lot of
know,
courage there, and you do it the right way.
yeah, but I don't think it's courage. It is almost like, I don't know, it's almost like like the handicapped kid that's just gonna do what they're gonna do. And like somehow I'm nice about it. Like I just have in my mind what the path is. And it's kind of like okay, yeah, sure, yeah, okay, and then we're going down whatever, and that doesn't mean that I'm inflexible,
Oh
because I
yeah,
do
no,
have that
no, yeah.
empathy piece to like to read the room and understand, but like there's part of me that like when I get on a mission, that's kind of where I'm going, and but the other thing is and you might be able to explain this better than I can. Like I've got this kind of ADD brain, but I can play the long game too.
Yeah,
And we talk about planting seeds, and planting seeds that's just the long game to getting in the direction of where I really want to go, where my mind is, and I'm willing to play that out for years if it takes years to be
yeah,
able to play that out. So and I think fortunately to your point is I'm pretty good at explaining the vision of where I want to go,
yeah.
and just somebody having vision creates buy-in. And I don't that's not something that I use actively, but thinking back through, if I'm talking about where I want to go, or where I see things going, or where we should go, and I talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, then people kind of naturally align in that direction. We end up going that direction. And fortunately, I've got the figure it out piece of I don't have to know what the end goal is. Like, we get us going in a direction and we're going to figure out how to make it right. So it's not like I have this like clear vision of exactly how things need to be. And there's no way that it's going to be any different from that. But we get going in a direction. It seems like the right direction. I've got belief that it's the right direction. And then we're going to use the tools and the skills and the people along the way to make it the right end goal.
Great explanation. I think you're spot on with that reflection. Last question: how do you and I, from completely different worlds, because I didn't even touch like the depths of my past, come to the same road? We have little differences, you and I, but I mean, they're so minute, it's not even worth mentioning.
Yeah.
How how did we get here on the same road from two different areas of stability, not stability, trauma and tragedy and whatever, to, being an adult at a young age and treated as an adult? Like, how did we get here? What is your thoughts on it?
It comes down to both of us through our different paths in life have the humbleness to understand how to positively influence people in a direction. And I
Yeah.
think I think both of us coming from this eyes wide open, emotional intelligence, being humble, and really learning what it takes to help motivate people has brought us to this core, right? And part of that I think goes back to human nature. People are influenced by nature in certain ways.
Yeah.
And I think you and I, through our paths and how we've learned to work with people and understand and lead and move people in a direction, have tapped into a common thread of, at least what resonates with us, and how to motivate people in a direction that feels good.
Yeah. Yeah, good answer. Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think again, it doesn't matter where you come from,
No.
but your story matters, who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the one time that you really came down on me that you don't realize that bothered me in the way of not letting you down was, there was a home I was building and I was doing a punch out and it was still dirty. Like, we hadn't had the rough clean. And you walked in, you looked around, you got frustrated, I could tell, because you don't normally get frustrated.
Yeah.
You left, you took off, you came back with mops and brooms and cleaning supplies. And you're like, how can you possibly do a great QI with a dirty home? That has sat with me for years. That bothered me. Not the time in the garage. The time in the garage, I really, to this day, feel like you were wrong. And I was
Yeah.
going to die on that sword. I was going to lay on it. And I am to this day. I know
Yeah.
when to pick my battles. But that one time, that was the first time that I saw you be assertive. And,
Yeah.
it wasn't, even then, it wasn't even bad. You went about it like, okay, I'm going to show you. why you're wrong. You should be doing this process. And, yeah, I thought I'd throw that in there because that's Don. That's you, and that's your story, and that's how you are. Like, you're a
Yeah.
process guy, you're a process maker.
Yeah.
I'm not a process maker to an extent. Like, I can, but my strong suit is carrying out the process and rallying the troops to accomplish it, the
Yeah.
task. And your strong suit is planting seeds and really seeing a process through. I love that there's that difference, but then the way we achieve those are almost identical. So
Yeah.
super cool
Yeah.
that our stories are completely different and we could be the same type of leader.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just touch back on that story that you just talked about. For me, again, like leadership's not that complicated. Like thinking through that
No, no.
moment,
Yeah.
there was no in my mind like, oh, I'm going to be a leader by doing this. In
No.
my mind,
Yeah.
my mind was my name's on this house.
Yeah.
My name is on this house by how you're performing. And so that was me just taking accountability and I didn't want to let a house go through that had been QC'd without being cleaned and done the right way. That or I knew that there was going to be 15 iterations of QC on the backside of it to get it where it needed to be. So
Yeah.
in the moment I was like, okay, well, it's worth it, worth my time and the company's money to go buy some cleaning supplies and let's just get this thing done now in one whack.
Well, also in the moment, you're coaching the moment. You're like, Adam, you have to switch this. You have to not do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, how could you possibly look at this with clean eyes through dirt, dust, and mud? And,
right.
I think there was a little bit of that in there. I think I'm going to disagree with you. I think it was, hey, this isn't the right process. I don't know why you're doing it this way. And it was the first time that you actually, to me, corrected my thinking in a assertive way, not like military assertive or, fig assertive, but more like, hey man, like this is not right. Other than that, you were always like, hey, what do you think? What do you think? And I just love, love that, but I'm a little more different than that. I'm a little more, here's the path and we're going to stay on this path. And like you were more like, hey, I have these paths. What paths do you think we should take? I have a way here and there. And I love that we're a little different, but here we are,
Yeah. We've touched on it earlier, and I know we're getting a little long in the tooth. We've got to shut this thing down in just a minute. But another place where we're I think slightly different is I'm real big on the micro corrections and I mean really to your point, almost nudging people back on the course without them really even knowing that I'm doing it, right?
Yeah.
And you're amazing at the reviews and sitting down and dissecting and helping really like that forward coaching and guiding where my tactics are a little more ninja and the corrections along the way, whether intentional or not, but like again, that's learning from you but leaning into me, right? And I think to be a really good leader, you have to learn from who's around you, but lean into your nature, because if you're being disingenuous to your nature, you're never going to be a good leader. People are going to see right through that every single time.
Yeah, and that's why I always point out I'm not a process maker. I'm not good at that stuff. I'm never going to be. I'm not good at technology. I don't know. And once you acknowledge it, then you're able to actually learn more.
Right.
You're able to learn from the people around you better. You don't have a wall up. You don't have a barricade up to protect yourself. You're like, I don't know. Let's learn it. And I think you're spot on with that, and love it, man. What a great story. I did not know a few of those stories. Yep. And it was good to know.
I definitely learned something from your past too, man. And helps me understand a little more who you are and who we are, and makes me appreciate us being able to do these Monday chats and unpack things. And again, I don't know where we're going. We're on a path with this, and we're gonna keep pulling on down that path, and we're gonna figure it out as we go. And like we've said, we're gonna learn each week. We're gonna try to make something better or improve what we're doing, and then see where this thing ends up. And if at the end of the day it ends up a bunch of awesome Monday conversations and a book between us, then mission accomplished, man.
100%. And, the feedback we get every week, even from, just a few people has been amazing.
Yeah.
And we love it. We absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, let's wrap this thing up. Again, this is the end of the Leadership Lunch Hour. Appreciate everybody listening in. If you like what we talked about, subscribe. We've got more content coming. We wanted to get through our stories on this one because our stories make up who we are, and hopefully we'll give you some more insight into how we lead and why we do what we do, and hopefully that'll help make some more impact on the future episodes. So, with that said, we'll see you next week.
yeah. Bye, guys. Thank you.